One change to the agenda, an addendum, item number 10.4, a letter of support for the Northwest Species at Risk Committee. So any other changes? Seeing none, can I get a motion to adopt the agenda? Councillor Gilroy, all those in favor? Carried. And we have quite a few scheduled delegations today, which is great. And we will start with Darlene in the museum.
Well, thank you.
Yeah. Thank you.
Thank you, Brian. You just want more money, that's what you said.
Yeah, I'll take one.
You take them?
Thanks.
And I think you know that.
So we'll let you guys sort of take it away and lead us through, and then we'll ask questions after.
Okay, we'll just run through. Oh,
Yeah.
okay. Can you hear me?
Yes. And you know, for all of the spectators that are out there on the internet, we should get you to introduce yourselves.
Okay. Okay, I'm Linda Koosveld. I'm secretary on the board for the High Prairie District Museum, and
Darlene Adams, the executive director of the museum.
Thank you.
And Mayor, Council, thank you for your time this evening. We'd like to give you a short presentation why we're asking for an increase in our museum operating and visitor information center funding. The following is just a brief history for those who aren't familiar with us, with the museum and the visitor information center. The demographics of our institution consists of, but it's not limited to, the actual town site of High Prairie, Treaty 8 Nations of Sucker Creek, Driftpile, Uticuma, Capawino, Pakasham, and Swan River, as well as East Prairie, Peavine, and Gift Lake Métis settlements. The communities of Gruard, Joussard, Canuso, Foss, Sunset House, Banana Belt, Gilwood, Big Meadow, Salt Prairie, Prairie Echo, and Triangle. Based on Alberta Municipal Affairs 214 population list, this region encompasses some 18,000 people. The area is home to the largest population of Métis people in Canada, and that's from Stats Canada 211. And our European ethnic groups in the area include British, Irish, Scottish, German, Ukrainian, Polish, Scandinavian, French, and Canadian ancestry. The High Prairie Museum was originally considered in 1955. The first formal meeting for the museum was held in '61. Initially, the museum was located in an empty two-room schoolhouse that is now home to the Golden Age Club. As part of the community's centennial project in 1967, a building was constructed to house both the community museum and library. The museum shared the space with the library until 2002, at which time the library moved and the entire space was taken over by the museum. Our institution, in the service of society and its development, acquires, conserves, researches, and exhibits for purposes of study, education, and enjoyment, material evidence of our people and their environment. Enhancing the ability of our community to express, preserve, develop, and promote their cultural heritage within Alberta and Canada. Open to the public, the museum is a multi-purpose facility. It provides year-round permanent exhibits and various traveling exhibits with a strong focus on local history. A small gift shop and custom picture framing is also available to the public. We provide the opportunity for local artists to learn and exhibit their work and provide our staff training opportunities in museum studies and visitor information services. In 2010, the board and the museum director decided it was time to revise and renew the museum. Exhibits were completely overhauled, and the process of renewing our Alberta recognized museum designation was started. In 2013, the museum was proud to have its recognized museum status renewed by Alberta Museums Association. Although the process is a substantial amount of work, this designation defines a clear message to our communities, supporters, elected officials, donors, and funders that they can have confidence in this status as an organization worthy of their support. The High Prairie and District Museum would not be without the support and backing of our shareholders, of which the town of High Prairie is our biggest, and for this we thank the town. How grateful we are for your ongoing support. We are emerging as a leading and innovative small community museum. We have worked diligently at supporting our community and are committed to continuous learning and community engagement. The museum works hard to stay relevant to the community and explores many ways to be self-sustainable. We continually search and apply for grant funding for all areas that the museum touches as an institution. Recent grants we applied for and received includes $48,000 in funds to aid the town in covering approximately half the costs of structural repairs needed to maintain the museum's building integrity and lifespan. In the fall of 2013, we were approached by the High Prairie and District Rec Board to take over the visitor information booth on a trial basis. In 2014, we integrated the Visitor Information Center to the building and became accredited with Alberta Culture and Tourism in 2015. We now operate 12 months of the year instead of the previous 4 months by the Rec Board. In 2015, the museum was asked by the Rec Board if they removed the funding, could we operate with our own funds? We could not. In 2018, we could not obtain our visitor information funding from the Rec Board due to them taking it out of their budget. The town gave us the $14,000 entirely and indicated they would bill the county for their half. The previous visitor information booth got $7,000 a year from the county and $7,000 a year from the town, and they operated 4 months out of the year. And that was passed on to us when we took it over. This $14,000 yearly amount has never covered the costs of integrating and operating the VIC services for the last 5 years. Much of the time spent for the Visitor Information Center is ordering, receiving, organizing, and displaying hundreds of travel brochures. Most of this work is done off-season, therefore is done by our director, which not only makes it difficult to cost out, but it takes time away from overseeing the museum and its collection. We have committed to the 2019 tourist season, but the board will review providing this service on a year-to-year basis for reasons of the limited funding we receive for providing this service, the lack of any space for expansion, and the new provincial government funding model of municipalities to implement services on an intermunicipal basis, including tourism, to which the town and county are already planning for. New plans may include locating and developing infrastructure to support services. The Alberta government requires a plan by 2021, I believe, so it is feasible that the delivery of the visitor information services in this area will change in the next few years. And next is just a small chart of how the museum is funded. As you can see, the town of High Prairie is our main funder. The casino is our next. A casino we get every 3 years. And then on the next page is where the funding goes. Most of it, again, you can see goes to salaries and the cost of salaries. 17%, the next biggest chunk goes to our utilities. So to carry on for the VIC services, we are asking for an increase of $8,000 each from the town and county, which would give us a total of $15,000 from each municipality to staff and operate the Visitor Information Center year-round. And if you note underneath, the County of Big Lakes has already approved this $15,000 for the VIC operations for 2019. And next note is the Museum Board did approve operations of Visitor Information Services for 2019, pending the requested increase in operation funding, provided we get the increase in operation funding. And during a recent AGLC eligibility review, it was brought to our attention that any expenses directly related to operating the VIC cannot be supported with gaming proceeds. The VIC supports the tourism of the High Prairie area and therefore is not considered an eligible program. Misspending of gaming funds could result in penalties, reimbursement requirements, or impact the society's eligibility and ability to conduct future gaming events. As a substantial amount of our funding is received from casino events and is used in daily operations of the museum, we must ensure that the museum continues to meet its eligibility requirements with the AGLC. So we have to be really careful of not spending any casino money for the visitor information services. So for the visitor information, we're asking for an increase of $8,000 from 218. And for museum operations, we're asking for an increase of $23,500 from the town. Now in 218, our operating grant from the town was $61,500. The previous 8 years, our operating grants were $60,000. We haven't asked for any increase from the town since 2012. The town generously gave us a $1,500 increase for operations last year, and we truly appreciate it. And this increase we did not request, but we really appreciate getting the extra money. And originally in our 219 budget, we were asking for an increase of $31,400. We have since reviewed and have decided not to implement a board honorarium program, which reduces what we're asking for this year for an increase of $23,500. More than our 2018 grant of $61,500, which would be a total of $85,000 for the 2019 fiscal year. And in conclusion, the reason for museum operations increase, the Museum Visitor Information Center currently has 1 full-time staff, and this fall we will have able to have a work experienced student work a few hours per week. The full-time staff has a wide range of responsibilities: grant writing, exhibit design, managing the gift shop, custom framing, doing the framing, janitorial, developing, delivering programs and events, care of museum collection, managing and promoting the Visitor Information Center, ensuring standards required by the AMA and visitor services are maintained, hiring and supervision of summer students, continuous upgrading of education in museum ways and means. If the director has to be away for a long period of time for whatever the reason is, the museum now has to close. The need to hire another full-time person is paramount for the museum to progress into the next decade. Part of this position would be an education program coordinator position to develop and deliver educational programming and events for both youth and adults. The position would also include visits to schools, seniors housing, and nursing homes, etc. By working collaboratively with people in the community, the education coordinator will identify the issues that are important to the community and will work to determine what role the museum can play in making a difference. Increasing the event and programming, the education coordinator will create a high level of community engagement for the museum. This new position will strengthen, encourage, and cultivate First Nations and Métis presence within the museum. By demonstrating inclusiveness and granting greater access to the museum's resources, this position will show that the museum respects values and supports the community it serves, meets and addresses the needs of the community as it works towards long-term sustainability. As the museum serves 12 schools within its geographical location, the museum has plans to develop and implement programs that support school curriculums and that engage students with the community they live in. And that is the end of the presentation. Thank you for your time and any questions. And please feel free, if you ever want to come and see the museum, we'll give you a tour, and there's lots of cool things there. And thank you.
Thank you for that. Does anybody have questions? Councillor Long.
What was the rationalization for the rec board to stop helping funding the VIC?
What was happening is that the Recreation Board was putting it in their budget, and then they were giving it to the museum, so it was just in and out. It was coming from the town. The town was paying for it, and the county was paying half, and it was going to the recreation, and when they contracted out to the museum instead of themselves, the money just flowed accordingly. So when the Recreation Board increased their budget a few years ago, they did not put the $14,000 into their budget for that.
Other questions, Councillor Gilroy?
Knowing that you've said 12 schools, I'm assuming that goes through Big Lakes County as well. Is there, if this additional position is funded, would that include connecting with the museum in Canuso and working with them to develop programs for the entire county? Because there is a museum in there, and I know the county funds part of that, I believe. So I'm just wondering if there's going to be some collaboration between them, between you and them, to service the schools at a higher level.
I guess, yeah, it's possible. Like, you know, if there was another position, I would definitely work with the other museums and all the schools.
Because I have been to both museums extensively, and they both have unique collections. So I'm thinking that if the county is going to be paying for some of this, maybe we can see if there's some sort of collaboration so that all of them work together.
No other questions there? I was just, one of the things in your presentation you talked about, you know, this position would develop educational programs and events for youth and adults. What were you thinking of for that? What kind of programming and events?
We would like to do more art shows. We have done quite a bit of programming and events in the past, but it's hard with one person. We'd like to have one person, even if it's part-time, focus on programming, working more with teachers and the curriculums. We've done like history, detective, and all kinds of different programs that work with the teachers' curriculums. So it would be just more of the same thing.
Okay.
Or more new things, like, you know, more being able to do more.
Because now the way it is, it's very hard. Like last season, because the director had an accident, I guess, and I don't know, was not here, was incapacitated for a month. And although you could do a lot of work from home, stuff like having school groups in was an impossibility. The only reason we were able to keep the museum open to the public was the summer students came in after school, and we had a volunteer for the month of June to keep the museum open 3 days a week. But those circumstances, being able to find a volunteer to keep that facility open, if the director, but even if she went for like a 2-week or 3-week education or her holidays,
6 days, we don't have anyone.
the museum has to close, and that I think is unfortunate, that we'd have to do something like that. And I think, like we said in the report, for us to progress into the next decade, finding some way of funding another full-time position, just so that there is backup. And there is a lot of work. I mean, for one person, the museum, at the stage that it is now, where Darlene has brought it up to, there is a lot of work, as well as we do our own janitorial, things like that. So.
Councillor Danaka.
And this is more of a comment because I am part of the museum board. It's also looking forward to possible succession. Darlene's not going to be there forever. It's also finding, even though we'd want her to be or like her to be, but it's finding a person who is interested in learning, and then maybe in the future possibly that person may want to take over the running of the museum, so it's a little bit forward thinking on the board's part as well.
Councillor Stenhouse.
So would another full-time position eliminate the summer students, or they're still in there?
No. The summer students are funded by a STEP program. We get a grant usually every year for them. And they're needed during for the Visitor Information Center. We have to have somebody on Saturdays. And what is it?
6 days a week.
6 days a week, including a Saturday for July and August. Yeah. So those 2 STEP students we use them every year. But again, like the funds are coming out of a grant that we usually get.
Councillor Long.
I commend the work that you do. I commend your dedication to all the board members, because all I hear whenever talking with Donna or Linda or anybody out there, the museum is an amazing place. Without us knowing what our history was and what our past is, what our cultural uniquenesses are, makes it very difficult for any town council to understand where we're going to go 10 years from now without knowing what our past was. And you help us do that. And so hopefully we'll be able to look at the funding and provide you with what you need. I support it wholeheartedly. And so hopefully we can work on that.
Thank you.
Thank you. We really appreciate it. And like I said in here, we really appreciate the town's support of the museum. It's ongoing, and we're grateful for it, because our museum is an amazing little place, and it really is. There's people just walk in there, and the storytelling and of what has happened in this area. It's an amazing. It is. The history of the High Prairie area is full of I don't know. But we thank you. Thank you for your time today.
Yeah, thank you for coming in, and once we get back to our budget deliberations, you'll be hearing back from us. But thank you for taking the time to come in and explain everything in this wonderful handout. Thank you. Okay, thanks for that. And now we're over to Michael Stripchuk and the Ukrainian Cultural Society. And they're all dressed up officially. That looks great, by the way, guys and gals. I love that.
Where's yours, Michael?
Yeah.
That is Michael.
Yeah.
We saw him dance last year, and he was a little tired.
Yeah.
Actually, I was one of the only 2 people that signed up for the adult group this year, so that wasn't enough to run a group.
Oh, yeah.
You should have got Chris.
Chris won't dance with us.
Yeah.
I think that's a good thing.
Yeah.
He agrees. So the Ukrainian Cultural Society is coming to you because we have ran into a situation this year where we are really short on funds. Even though we have drastically reduced our budget by no longer employing an instructor out of Edmonton, we are just employing, thankfully Danielle's Mark stepped up for us this year and took on the whole group. So that has saved us a significant amount of money. It's been a bad 3 years for funding. Our casino was down the last time by over $12,000. That's going to last us 3 years. We're out of casino money already. Our fundraising this year is significantly down on all of our normally good fundraising events. The community's just broke. So it's hard, like our Baba Supper, which normally brings in almost 400 people, we had 250. It's just, everything's down, our sausage orders. So we find ourselves in a situation where we're not going to make it through our season. We're $10,000 short, and we're coming to you guys to ask you for help. Part of our forward thinking in the last 3 years is our costumes, which the club owns, were getting old. We're getting tired. Some of them were danced in by Stella's daughter. So they are old. So we have been, that's why my kids are here tonight, to show you what we've been replacing them with, and they're not cheap. To get authentic costumes out of the Ukraine runs about $180 per costume. Some of them, like my son's, is significantly more than 180, as you can see by his garb. We have been rich in the culture in this area. Ukrainian culture in High Prairie is huge. We promote that. That we're not just a dance society, we're a Ukrainian cultural society. So we have Pasanka making, we have the cabbage rotis, we have the pierogi making, we host events. We didn't do one this year because we didn't have enough volunteers, but the last 2 years we've been holding a Ukrainian Christmas supper, where we can teach our culture to a select group of people that are able to come out, and we've been really moving forwards with trying to expand the culture, but we're running into the same thing. It's the same, as you guys all know, it's the same 10 people or the same 12 people on every board, and unfortunately our babas are getting burnt out. They're not getting any younger. So it's been a real hard year for us, and it's humbling to have to come ask you guys for a donation, but that's where we're at. Our costs have gone up, like the stage rental, which it went up about $300 this year. It's just that way all the way across the board. So we did not get our Community Foundation of the Arts grant that we traditionally get. Whether we'll get it yet this year or not, we don't know, because running into an election, everything might get put on hold. That's traditionally about $7,000. We didn't get that. So that's where we're at. And our next casino, which should have been this next quarter, we have now been informed will be in the fourth quarter, which means we will not see casino funds until the new year, and we just cannot make it without some help. So that's where we're at. If you guys have any questions about clarity or what we do.
Councilor Gilroy and then Councilor Stenhouse.
Other than the support of our council for funding, what other fundraisers do you still have that maybe some of the council or others can also be part of?
We would love for you guys to come out to Zabava this Saturday. We have significant amount of tickets left for sale. So
Cost?
$40 for adults, $25 for kids. I believe under 3 is free, but they still need a ticket so that we can monitor capacity. That's the next one coming up. We are doing a Spring Pierogi Fest, I believe the first week of April. So that'll be similar to our Baba Supper, except it won't be all the traditional foods. It'll just be garlic sausage and a variety of different pierogies, including dessert pierogies. So we're looking forward to that. That's a new one for us to try. And that will run us out of our season. Then we're done. Oh, we currently are undergoing a new meat order from Stanici's. So that's ongoing right now.
And the deadline for that is? I'm sorry to put this to you, Michael.
I think the 27th. I think it's like right away. My wife takes care of that one, so that's why I'm unsure of it.
Yeah, I sympathize with you, because even with Watershed, all their funding has been delayed as well. And so they were trying to hire a replacement for one of their staff that left, and they can't because they don't even know if that funding is going to come in. So there is some hesitancy to make any investments from the provincial area right now, so I can understand that.
Councillor Stenhouse?
A couple of questions. So what's you say you'll be at the end of your season. What is your season? When does it start? When does it end?
Our season is traditionally, we start signing kids up the first week of September, and then Danielle will start dancing with them usually the last week of September, and then it runs until the end of March. So Zabava is our final performance here in High Prairie, and then they perform at Festival.
We perform at the schools afterwards.
Correct, sorry, I forgot about that. So, right, so then their next official performance will be in the weekend of the 16th and 17th. They go to a festival in Grand Prairie, where they're judged against other Ukrainian dance troops. That was one of the other things I forgot to mention. Traditionally, we also give back to the community. So we dance for free at Yee, which is usually in January. This year they've had some problems on their board and they didn't do a supper, so we didn't go because they didn't have anything. We also dance every year at Pleasant View Lodge for the seniors, and we dance at both elementary and St. Andrew's schools. And that we do not charge to go out, we just show up to show our culture off. And the things like our Pasanka making and all of those, we don't charge people for those. They're welcome to come out. We provide the materials. Usually Stella provides the materials and teaches.
And my second question is, you said your stage rental went up. Where do you rent the stage from?
The stage comes out of Production Lighting out of Edmonton. They're the only ones that have a big enough stage. You need a 24 by 40 stage that can support dancers. And that, we have looked into purchasing a stage. It's $40,000+. We don't have that kind of money. So we spend on average, it was $4,000 last year, and it's gone up to $4,300, just shy of $4,290 this year. Yeah, it's not cheap.
Councillor Courtly.
How's your numbers been, Michael? How for enrollment
This
past
year's down.
and now?
This year's down. We hit a year. Last year was their 40th year, so we had a lot of dancers that stuck it out. Like the Kid boys who were well past wanting to continue, but they wanted to stick around for the 40th year. So our numbers are down. We've lost about 8 families, which means we've lost that many people fundraising. We've lost that money because the dancing, and we try to keep our costs down for people to dance because repertoire is really expensive. But even that, we raised our prices this year per dancer, and we range from $275 to $450, and then we have private dancers that they pay for their own. Like if they want to do a duet or solo, they have to pay Danielle for her instruction time. Correct. It's been a hard 3 years, and this year there's not a single economy that's doing well. Like we've gotten by the last couple of years on the agricultural community, but this year they got their butts handed to them too, so money's tight.
So you had mentioned about your membership. You've got obviously some coming from the town and from the county.
Yes.
Have you talked with the county at all?
Tomorrow morning.
Oh, okay. I was just wondering about that because I'm sure it's a mix of both. And,
oh, absolutely, yes.
Yeah.
It's a fairly even mix, actually.
Okay. So how many in your club, do you think?
There are 25 dancers this year,
Oh, okay.
16 families.
Okay, no, that was it. I was just
And we have quite a unique group. We have some Aboriginal kids that are dancing, and obviously 3 Ukrainians.
Yeah. And I know all about the cost. My daughter was in repertoire dance for years, so there is a lot of costs that the families incur for all of the travel, for all of the festivals and stuff too. Like that adds up.
Yeah, we only do the one festival,
okay.
Just because we dance so much for the community that we feel that's where our focus is to give back to the community.
Any other questions for them? No?
So we don't have a specific number. Our number is we're 10,000 short. We're just hoping you guys can open your purse strings and help us, and then every one of you will come out on Saturday with your spouses, kids, whoever.
All right.
And we will be hitting up the MLA as well. I don't know if that'll go very far.
So,
Councillor Long.
So where is it being held this Saturday? So everybody in TV land.
At the Elks Hall.
What time?
Doors open at 5. 5 or 5:30? 5:30, and then supper is first, and then the kids dance.
And where do they get the tickets from if people want?
UFA and Lee Blackhurst at the St. Andrews store.
And the $40 is dance plus food?
Yes.
Okay.
Dance plus
Just
food.
want to
and then
make sure
there's a
that everyone
family-
understands dance plus food. So it's
Yeah.
like taking.
And this is a traditional full out, like it has your full everything, your kucha, pierogies, cabbage rolls, nachinka, nalesniki, roast beef, kubasa, and then salads, buns, and desserts. And Periski's famous layered diamond shaped jello.
And extra big chairs.
Yeah. Well, now I see. Now I see Chris nodding. You know, he might not dance, but he got his attention.
Chris
now.
doesn't come.
Yeah.
He sends Richard.
My weekend.
Your weekend. Oh, your weekend this year. Excellent. So, is there any other
Don't
questions?
need any lunch.
Yeah, don't eat lunch. I strongly recommend you don't eat before.
Save that space.
Thank you very much for
Thank
coming
you.
in, and I love your costumes. Those are awesome.
Good luck.
Thank you very much.
Yeah. All right, Alicia and MMSA.
Thank you. I thought we were number 4.
Well, we had one of our delegations canceled out earlier today, so, yeah. He
You
didn't
don't get to
really,
sit back there. You gotta come up front too.
All right, thank you for having us. Should I introduce
Yeah,
myself?
I was just going to say, please introduce yourselves.
Alicia Modi, Manager of Planning at Mackenzie Municipal Services Agency.
Yemi Babalola, Municipal Planner at Mackenzie Municipal Service Agency.
So we're here to put forward a bylaw amendment for the land use bylaw to council, and I just wanted to make sure that we came to present it to you so that you were fully aware of the contents and we had the opportunity to address any questions that you might have about the changes that we're proposing. So the bylaw, it's an administrative amendment being brought forward by the development officer and the CAO based on their actual usage of the bylaw and some desired improvements or tweaks to the bylaw to give them some clearer direction and make sure that we're all on the same page in terms of where certain developments would be permitted, and also just to make it a little bit easier to use, so to make sure that it flows and they're not accidentally missing things, because it is a very large bylaw, so it's pretty easy to trip over things and not identify where things are being linked together. So the main, the substance of the changes to the bylaw, where we do a lot of tweaks to the definitions, specifically related to the accessory dwelling units. So when we speak about accessory dwelling units, we're talking about garage suites, garden suites, and secondary suites. And we're just kind of changing the way those are being listed in the bylaw so that it's clear that they are dwelling units, and they get lumped together with all of the other dwelling units, both within the definition section and also when they're listed in specific districts. Just easier for the development officer to use the bylaw, and also if we're communicating with anybody from the public, easier for them as well.
I'll just add to that for council, it's on page 59, like if you've got it there, you're searching through. Okay, thanks.
Fair enough. And then, in addition to that, we have done some changes to the manufactured home and modular building definitions. The bylaw was referencing certain different codes, and and the administration wasn't 100% clear of how those things play together. So we've identified what it is to be a manufactured home compared to a modular building. And essentially, they are essentially the same thing. A manufactured home is a modular building. However, our communities definitely feel certain ways about homes that have a particular look, where they're very long and narrow. So we're still treating them separately as manufactured homes, which means that they're a dwelling unit and they kind of have a certain length-width ratio. And those particular dwellings we would only want in certain portions of the community, and you want to know how to distinguish between them and make sure that they're only in those locations. Whereas a modular building, really the modular construction industry in Alberta is really growing and diversifying, and so there's the possibility of developing a wide variety of developments with a modular building, and that's, you know, depending on the number of contractors you have in your community and all of those things, that can be a really big boost to the ease of development. So we don't want to shut the door on that, but we want to make sure that we are distinguishing between the two, so you're providing some certainty to the other residential districts in terms of what's permitted there. So we've clarified both of those definitions. And then there are also associated specific use regulations. But before I get to those, I'll just touch on a couple of other definitions that we've tweaked. Administration realized, as we were redoing the land use bylaw, that the way health service was defined and the way the districts were applied, there was a pharmacy, an existing pharmacy in your community that is located not in a retail area. We wanted to allow for that, so we've tweaked the health service definition to incorporate a pharmacy, which would normally just be in a retail store, but we've added that one particular use to the health services definition, so that even though it's not in a commercial area, we're still allowing for that and recognizing the development pattern that's present in your community and making sure that they can continue in that location. And then finally, we've just simplified the general retail establishment definition. So those are just some tweaks to the definitions that we've been working on. In addition to that, we have, and I'm skipping a few pages if you're actually looking at the bylaw, there were some minor things that areas of the bylaw that we need to touch when we're dealing with these different uses to make sure that we're referring to them properly throughout the bylaw, because that's one of the challenges of a land use bylaw, is that different things are all connected, and if you pull on one thread, you're going to catch a couple others, and you've got to make sure that you've made it consistent across the bylaw, or otherwise things will start to get confusing. So that's why we've updated the parking and loading table, for example, relative to how we are now listing and dealing with the accessory dwellings. Did I hear? No, I didn't hear a question. Okay. So in terms of the special use regulations, we have split out the way we're dealing with accessory dwellings. Previously, everything was lumped in one. Now we have regulations that apply to any and all accessory dwellings, and then regulations that are specific to each of the 3 different types of accessory dwelling that you might have. Some of the key things I think that we've done here to make it a little bit more user-friendly, the sizes are different depending on the type of dwelling or accessory dwelling that you're doing, and when it comes to a secondary suite, we're tying what size a secondary suite could be to the house itself, which is on the lot, which is, if you're developing a secondary suite, it is contained within that one principal dwelling that's there. So we're tying the size to what size that principal dwelling is. When it's a garage suite, we're tying it to the size of the garage, and then when it's a garden suite, just a standalone suite, it's got a size limitation so that we're not putting up very large secondary suites in the backyard. And then one of the other things with a garden suite in particular that I saw was in the previous bylaw, and I think was probably fairly developer and family unfriendly, is that the garden suite was previously not something that could remain. It was a time-limited development, and you couldn't put it on a permanent foundation. So that's a lot of investment that someone might make on their property, that then the town would be in the position to say, you must remove that in really not that long of a time frame. And that, to me, that just kind of would put a halt. I don't really know of anybody, unless you've got very deep pockets, who would make those kinds of choices only to have to remove development again. So we wanted to remove that from the bylaw. And then going on to the manufactured homes, in this section we have created some more clear standards for the Development Authority, in particular with relation to how old a manufactured home can be when it moves on to a property. So right now the bylaw is fairly open. The Development Authority can say no to a manufactured home if it's in a condition that they're not comfortable with, but that is a very hard decision to make just on your own, drawing that line in the sand. So now we've drawn a very clear line in the sand, which is a 12 years old or 12 years or newer, essentially, is what you're allowed to bring into the town. And if it is older than that, then the answer is simply no. And I think that makes sense because you can bring in older manufactured homes or trailers, if you want to call it that for clarity. Trailers, manufactured homes have been built to the Alberta Building Code since 1992, but if you're looking at a stick-built home, yes, a building in 1992 is built to that standard, but today you're only going to be able to build to the current standard. You're not going to be able to build to the old standard. So we're basically capping how old we're allowing a building to come into the town. But that does have implications for affordability, and it will place some restrictions on what can happen, which is a positive or a negative depending on which side you're on. If you'd like to bring in something that's older, then the answer will be no. But it at least gives the Development Authority, when they're making those decisions, a very clear standard that they're pointing to and able to say that this is the standard that was set by the town and the council and not just by their gut reaction to it. So I think that really provides some certainty and helpfulness to them. Just one more second, and then I will open for questions. Just the very last thing, I just wanted to point out that we're not changing the way any of these uses are enabled in the bylaw. So they're still being listed the same way in each of the districts where they're present. We're just tweaking the language, but we're not changing where a manufactured home is a use that's listed or where the accessory dwellings are listed within the residential districts.
Councillor Long.
So if a person has a 1981 trailer, manufactured home, whatever you want to call it, and they move, are they able to sell that, and is somebody able to buy that and have it grandfathered in? Or if it's sold and they move out of it, then that is too old, so it has to leave the town?
This is only if we're actually changing a building or a structure that's on the site. So if someone has an old trailer, they're living in it today, and that site, they want to leave and they're selling that site with the trailer on it and nothing is changing about the structure on the site, then that's not going to trigger a requirement to remove the building. It's only if someone removes a trailer, or if there is an empty lot, you cannot bring in something that is older than 12 years.
Yeah, good.
Yeah.
Councillor Gilroy?
Yeah, actually the bylaw committee looked at the 12 years, and it was our recommendation of 12 years for it. There's just two quick things. One, going a little bit with Councillor Long's idea, what if they move from one area of the town to another? Would that then be a new building if they'd lived in that particular mobile home for a length of time? Would it be considered a brand new one because you're moving it from the west side to the east side, for example, or north to south?
In that case, it would not be permitted because the development is tied to the lot, not tied to the person. So yeah, if you had a 1981 trailer over on the north side of town and you wanted to move it to the south, that would not be something that the Development Authority would be able to say yes to.
And I guess the other thing that I wanted to stress is the fact that a little more of your credentials, because you are the president of the Alberta chapter of that conference that you're
I think
involved
I'm on the board of the Community Planning Association of Alberta, not the president
No.
or the chair, just
Okay.
on the board.
Just want to make sure that people
Yeah.
understand that it is something that goes beyond this, that it's very, you're very structured in the whole thing.
Thanks.
Maybe someday. Build a wall.
Councillor Daneka.
As well, one of the reasons that the bylaw people put in a specific year, as Alicia had said, it's basically cut and dry now. Mm-hmm. It's not, well, I revamped it and putting pressure on whoever the development clerk or the development authority is saying, no, you can't, but somebody else can. So it's pretty cut and dry. It's 12 years, that's it. End of story. Takes the decision making and the pressure off of that development person to make that decision, where it's already set in stone in the bylaw saying 12 years, that's it. No.
Yeah, just when looking at that, and I'm looking at that particular 12 years is section 9.6.6, and it says that the development authority may require. So again, we've got a lot of, it's not cut and dry anymore, right? It's may require. And what's the may based on, and why would the may require a safety codes officer, a structural engineer to certify this, or an inspection to be done? I'm just wondering why we've left that.
Sorry,
again.
I just want to confirm that we're looking at the same bylaw right now, because 9.6.6 is not the same as what I see.
And it's the A where it talks about a manufactured home shall be less than 12 years old at the time of application. I'm not sure where you've got that one.
It's older than 12 years. The authority may require it, 9.66. The second sentence in 9.66.
I see she's getting a copy for you. So
Sorry,
you can see what
yeah.
we're looking
I didn't
at, the
grab
same
the
thing.
actual agenda,
We'll
yes.
give her her agenda package, yeah.
Page 67.
Almost there. Okay, perfect. Okay, the may require is basically there are times where we do not want to tie the development authority's hands too tightly, because if you say shall and they fail to, then the town is putting themselves into a situation where you may be liable, or we don't want to. The idea is to just leave the development authority with some discretion there in terms of whether or not that's really required. Because if we said shall, so a manufactured home shall be less than 12 years old. If it's older than 12 years, the development authority could just choose to say no, right? If it's older than 12 years. So it's only may require if they really want to pursue it.
Okay, like, I mean, you could,
Are you
if you just
suggesting-
scratch that, then it would remove that. Then it's a line in the sand. Right
Yeah.
now, it's still, maybe if we get it inspected, it can be older than, right?
Because it does open the door to any age beyond 12, actually.
Well, that's what I'm saying
Go
when
back
you
to
look at that
77
particular
or
one.
81 or whatever.
It just opens the door as opposed to it being cut and dry, like you could just remove that part of it, and then it's got to be at less than 12 years old. Period. Or you go ahead, Tara.
Another option that could be considered is extending it to, let's say, 15 or 20 with an inspection, but it still limits you to a finite line, that if the structure is good, they will allow up to 15 or 20 or whatever number you guys decide on. So it gives a few extra years, but it still doesn't leave it open to 1981 or whatever.
Sorry, the reason you've caught me a bit flat-footed, and the reason for that, I'm looking at this and I'm a little bit confused because this doesn't look like the bylaw I thought I was speaking to. And I'm not sure where that mistake came in. But this is not the same as what I brought in my file, and I'm pretty sure that this is an older version of the bylaw. And since the CAO and the development officer are not in the room right now, I'm not really sure what to say.
Yeah.
Because this is slightly older language. This is a version of the bylaw that we were working on, absolutely. It's not the final version.
So maybe with that in mind, when we get to this in our agenda package, we may want to wait just to get the final, because we don't want to, well, we could do a first reading, we could do a first reading and come back to it.
Would it be appropriate
Would it be appropriate, it says if the manufactured home is older than, would it be appropriate to say older than 12 but less than 15 or something like that, where you're putting a specific limit on the actual age? You're still giving the flexibility of more than 12, but you're still making it modern enough that someone, without going way, way beyond what would be...
Yeah, and that was Terry's suggestion there. Yeah, but what did Alicia? What were you guys suggesting on this particular item?
Yeah, so I had pardon me, I had reordered the section and just replaced the whole section rather than the, here I'm only seeing the last 4 provisions of that section, so we had just replaced it completely. So the way the bylaw is reading in front of me right now is a manufactured home shall be less than 12 years old at the time of application. The manufactured date of the manufactured home shall be required as part of the development permit application. And that's the end of the reg. So it is, we did update that and kind of took out this source of conversation that we're having right now has been completely changed. So I don't know how this happened. But I would be, yeah, it does happen. I would be much more comfortable for council to see the full language that we had on the previous, or the version that's in front of me. So essentially that's the main crux of the difference between these two bylaws. So you could still give it first reading, but my recommendation would be that when the town goes to advertise for the public hearing, that we advertise the updated version of the bylaw. So if that could be incorporated into your motion, that would be a good idea. Yeah, ideally.
Councillor Acting CA.
Yeah. Who was the updated bylaw sent to?
Marion, the development officer. Yeah. I'm sure she has it. I assume it. Yeah, she just accidentally grabbed an old file to put onto the agenda.
Thank you.
Okay. Any other? I guess my other question for you would be you've gone through the entire bylaw, or was this just, like, I'm sort of looking at what was the impetus for this change, and then has everything, you know, are we capturing all of the things that need to be changed with this version?
This bylaw deals with some cherry-picked concerns that we know are issues right now. There's absolutely possibilities for future land use bylaw amendments. I know that we do have one that we're working on bringing forward that deals with notification. Now that you guys have updated your notification bylaw, and I think the administration is looking at doing some changes to the way development permits are notified across the community. We're working with them to try and figure out where to distinguish or what the process is that they're interested in doing, and if there are ways that they want to notify differently depending on the type of development, so a higher standard of notification if it's a major development compared to if someone is adding an accessory structure into their backyard, you know, so that we're making sure that the town is really informed when there are developments that might be of concern or interest, and not necessarily bogging down the process when it's a much simpler application. And then also dealing with the timelines associated with the changes in the Municipal Government Act and the development permit requirements around that. So it's another bylaw amendment that I know we want to bring forward soon. At this point, if we are unable to do first reading tonight, we might be able to roll that all into one package and bring it to the next council meeting, because that was kind of the timeline we're working on for those changes. But like I said, the land use bylaw is a massive document, and it is all connected, and things change depending how the town wants to deal with things. So there's always possibilities for more amendments to this bylaw. It's not atypical at all. It's regular. And I would encourage it actually that land use bylaw amendments happen on a regular basis, because that's how you know that you are tailoring it to the needs of your community. Because it's very hard to have a crystal ball that can accurately predict everything that will be coming forward in the next 5-10 years when you're doing a land use bylaw.
Okay. Any other questions? See none, I'll say thank you very much for coming down to share that. It does shed some light on it. There was, like you said, it's a big bylaw, and wondering where it all came from, so that's good.
And apologies, I don't know how that happened. Next time I'll double check the agenda.
Well, I think it's better without it in there. The change that you say that you've put in the latest version, I think is better.
I think it was that's why I really don't want to move further, because this version that I have in front of me is a better version.
Yeah.
Yeah. So.
Okay. Thank you
Thank
very
you.
much.
In talking about Councillor Gilroy and having that line in the sand. If you extend it to allow for 15 years, up to 15 years, you're still going to have people who are going to argue that my trailer is only 16 years old, so I should,
And I'll get an
and
inspector.
or my home or whatever. And so I like it being clear and cut and dried. And
We'll
makes
get,
for growth.
we can go over that when we get to that in the
Yeah.
agenda item, because I'm
It's
sure
coming.
we can talk about it and we can go from there. So moving on in our agenda, we're moving to the peace officers report, 3.1. Can I get a motion on this? Councillor Danaka.
I make a motion that council receive the senior peace officers January 2019 report for information.
All right. Now, I guess we can ask questions through our CAO, if we have any, or he can get us answers. So go ahead, Councillor Stenhouse. It's on page 9.
Page 9 and on.
Okay. Under traffic bylaw, there was 11 warning parking violations. Is that because of snow removal?
Safe travels, you guys.
I know they issued several parking warnings because of snow removal. I can't guarantee that that's what it was all about. I'm sure Alan briefed Brian on it, but.
Okay. So going down to bylaw infractions, the total was 316 verbal written warnings for January.
Yeah, I circled that too. It seemed really high for a lot of warnings.
I can ask Alan about that and I'll get him to email an answer to you guys tomorrow. Or Terry might know.
I can answer that one. This time of the year, all the business licenses are all due, and all the dog licenses are due. And so anybody who was not paid by the end of January 31st got a warning, and they had a week or two to come in. If it's not paid by tomorrow, it goes to provincial court and no longer municipal. So that's why there's so many in February.
Councillor Gilroy.
With all due respect, I tend to believe that when we have a peace officer's report, or we have a report from Public Works or a report from the fire department, I believe we need a representative here, as opposed to putting all the pressure upon our CAO or acting CAO. I believe if they're not going to be here, then I think the report should be tabled till they are here, because they should be the ones accountable for what they do.
Yeah, well, they have to be accountable. They'll just get back to us with at least an email response, and if we're not happy, we can get more. But at least we get sort of any questions. If there was no questions, then they don't have to be here for the period. But
Technically, I don't know if you can do that, because Municipal Government Act states that all the managers are not required to go to council meetings or give reports to council. Normally it goes to the CAO, because the CAO is their boss, and it's only the CAO that gets that and gets that information. Some communities, it's only the CAO that goes to council meetings. In here, our CAO wants us to come to meetings to give our council a little bit more information, but it's not something you can enforce.
Councillor Danaka.
Just in regards to what Councillor Gilroy was referring to, the last session of council when Mayor Cox was the mayor, we had, I believe, set it out that the peace officers actually attend the meetings quarterly. So that they come quarterly. I don't know if you can answer this question, Acting CAO Walker. Unregistered motor vehicles, 15 infractions for January. Do you know if those were done via traffic stops? Okay.
But I will get Alan to send you a response.
Okay, and the reason I'm asking that question is I've had a couple people approach me and stating that they were given fines for unregistered vehicles. Those vehicles were parked in their driveways. Not moving. So I just want some clarification on that.
I'll have him address all of council in the email that's sent out.
A note on there.
Any other questions? I had one, Vernon, which was the proceeding with a court order on an unsightly / encroachment. Just curious what that's all about.
Again, Alan probably briefed Brian, but I didn't have a chance to talk to Brian or Alan before Brian left and this meeting. So I'll also have that included in the.
Something's going to court, it's going a long ways is what I'm thinking. I just wonder.
Unless Terry knows what's it about.
I'm not sure enough to answer that one either.
Okay. Thank you for following up on that. We had a motion to receive the report for information. All those in favor? Carried. Moving on to our February 12th meeting minutes. Can I get a motion on that one? Councillor Gilroy.
The council approved the minutes from the February 12th, 2019 regular meeting of council as presented.
Any changes, any errors people see in the minutes? Nancy's done a bang-on job. Perfect. That's good. Oh, your hand is up.
Oh, I was just going to make a comment about one of the items. It's not a correction, but I was surprised that the plaque at the hospital was already up the day after we approved it. And I brought that forward, that I was surprised when I saw the plaque, and it was supposed to have been put in there by the mayor, from what I'd heard from the Ladies Auxiliary. So just a point of disappointment, but everything else is accurate here.
Okay, no other. I see some questioning points, but we have a motion to receive for information. All those in favor? Carried. Moving on, then, is there any business arising from the minutes? That was sort of one of them, but nothing else to go over there. Councillor Long.
I'm not sure. I'm not sure if it's even addressed in the minutes, but I've been having some people coming. No, this isn't. No, never mind. I'll bring it up in my councillor minutes at the end of your report. Yeah.
Okay. Okay, moving on then to 9.1, financial commitment for the High Prairie Golf Club. Councillor Courtley.
That council approve funding in the amount of $15,000 to the High Prairie and District Golf Club, and request that the High Prairie and District Golf Club apply annually for funding if needed.
All right. Any questions on this one? Councillor Danaka?
It doesn't say, it doesn't say where this is coming from. Like, is it from council's budget? Is it a capital thing? I'm curious.
I have no idea, because this is not something that normally would get paid for out of our budget, so I have no idea where it should come from. Months ago, when they first had problems, I had suggested that they come to me and we'd apply for funding grants or whatever, different places. Nobody ever came. I mentioned it a second time. Nobody ever came. And I have no idea where the money is going to come from. That'll be up to council to decide.
Recreation.
Councillor Gilroy, then Councillor Stenhouse. She sort of got her hand up. Well, the pen was up, not really a hand.
Just, is there a way, since they quote, I remember when they were here last meeting and they said that it was already ordered, and it was coming, and well, we know the whole report of what they gave. Is there a way of applying for funding after the fact? So in other words, it was an emergency, they had to put it in. Okay, is there still the possibility of recovering that money through another grant application?
There may be. I know that when it first happened, they would have had the opportunity at the time. It was an emergency situation, and we could have maybe done something then. There's always a possibility, but can't say for sure.
Just when it comes to grants, I believe, and I can't say this for certain, but I know just from an outside conversation that they were also working with the county and their grants person on some grants. So they might have been just dealing with their grants person and not coming here. I don't know that for sure, but that's a very real
The
possibility.
county has extended them some money though, I know that.
Yeah, but I'm just saying when we're talking specifically about grants, they might have got be applying on some grants already. Councillor Stenhouse and then Councillor Courtney.
So if this is approved, this 15,000, is this coming out of 2019 or is this leftover from 18?
This would have to come from the 19 budget. Councillor Courtney.
Basically, it looks like in their letter, the first year the money would be used to purchase the new furnaces. So we own the building. We own the land. We own the building. It's our facilities. It's going back into our own facilities. Can we not? Is that not something that is just capital? Exactly. That's where I'm going with that, Michael. It's just capital. It's improving our own facilities. So there's got to be, it's something we just have to do. We have to figure out how we're going to do it. Put in the 19 budget somehow. And I know it's tight, but in my mind, it has to be done. We have to do that. So.
Close one arena down. That savings.
Keep it on topic here. Okay, any other questions on this one? Okay, so all those in favor?
We should identify where the money's coming
Where's the
from.
we can't vote on it until we know where the money's coming from.
And the motion, I think it should be in the motion where it's coming from too.
Oh, okay.
Can we include that in the capital budget, Terry?
Can always include something in the capital budget.
So I guess council could make the motion to have it be added to the Town High Praise 2019 capital budget.
Okay, so
It's a one-time shot.
Nancy, did you catch that change?
It's a one-time shot.
Okay, and that's a friendly amendment. Are you all right with that, Councillor Courtney?
Yep.
Okay,
But in the request also is that they apply annually for the fund.
right.
It's an ongoing.
Well, but your motion is for 1 year.
This is just for the year.
It says, and they can request, if they need it, they can request again.
Yep.
So it's only
That's
a
what we're
one-time
saying.
commitment here, is what we're looking at.
Okay, all those in favor? Carry. Moving on to the Ukrainian Cultural Society donation request. I get a motion on this one? Councillor Gilroy?
Before I make motion, since they go to my church, does that constitute a conflict of interest?
No.
Absolutely.
I just want to make sure it's, otherwise someone else can make a motion and I won't vote for it. I want to be very clear.
No fiduciary, you have no pecuniary interest.
Okay.
You're good.
except that I get
Unless it's the coin in the
They-
plate at the Sunday.
So, okay, no, seriously, I want to be very clear on it. As much as it sounds strange, I want to be over and above here to make sure that everything's clear. Okay, so I'll suggest that council approve the High Prairie Ukrainian Cultural Society's application for funding in the amount of $1,000, since that's what we've done in previous years.
Okay. 1,000 questions?
Well, that's what it says we've done in previous years. If you want more, I'll let the discussion's there.
Let's see what Terry has to say.
Okay, Terry.
Because it's such a strong cultural aspect and not necessarily a recreational aspect, it may fall under the FCSS guidelines. I can check, but it'll take me about 5-10 minutes to do so. So if council wanted to wait for me to turn on my computer and look it up, I can do that right away.
Well, if we approve this, it's great if it can come from FCSS, but if it can't, would that change people's minds? Yeah, okay.
Because if it comes from FCSS, we can give them more.
Correct.
I'm willing to take a break for 10 minutes while she looks it up.
Yeah, we're almost there.
Okay, yeah, we can, in the middle of a debate, yeah, we can
I
still
don't know.
Yeah, I'm just trying to think if we
How
can
about
do
if
it
we all
right.
agree upon it then?
Yeah, we can agree, we'll take a 10-minute break and we'll come back after and see what we find out.
By what you